Hi everyone and welcome at Humans and AI, a show by the global AI community. Just as every week we are going to have a little conversation with a human. And this time we are interviewing Derek. Hi Derek, nice to join you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, Derek, first question for you for the people to get to know you a little bit better. In case you wouldn't be working in the tech industry, what would you be doing?
It's such a good question, and it's funny. I almost can't imagine my life without tech. So my default answer would be I'd love to just buy a van, travel around, work on little side projects in that van. So go in and get to work in neat places and everything. Get to go on lots of hikes and adventures. I feel like I would still want to be working on side projects, building little apps or stuff like that. If you told me I couldn't do any tech-related things, that maybe I would go and try to be a thru hiker somewhere. I think that'd be fun. It'd be definitely a big break from any sort of technology.
So maybe you should think about the idea of becoming a traveler and vlogging in the meantime and being an influencer.
That's true. Become a content creator, yeah, and be nice and profit from the adventures and everything.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So you like to travel a lot.
Yeah, in particular, I'm a really big fan of the outdoors. So I love hiking. I've gotten into trail running. I haven't been able to do it too recently. I injured myself running an ultra marathon, but yeah, I love just being out in the middle of the wilderness. Just it's a really nice break from all the hustle and bustle.
Cool. Well, let's go back to tech.
Sounds good.
What do you and your team do?
Sure. So I'm currently a product manager on the Azure OpenAI service. Essentially, our goal right now is we're essentially kind of taking these models from OpenAI and bringing them onto the Azure platform, so we can help enterprises really be able to use these at scale. So we're creating these models where they're kind of enterprise friendly. One of the exciting things in December, we became HIPAA compliant. So really trying to make these models really accessible to enterprises, so we can really start to kind of see the power of these across a broad range of use cases and companies.
Okay. So you're a program manager. What exactly does that mean?
Sure. So essentially, I'd say I'm kind of the interface between our engineering teams and our customers and we're really and design folks and marketing. Really, we're trying to just kind of build a quality product, make sure our customers are successful, and work with engineering to make sure we kind of understand those what we need to build to make sure we do that. I really like to think of it as this virtuous feedback loop where we build something, we give it to customers give us feedback, and we kind of continue that loop. I think that's kind of the part of the job I enjoy the most.
Okay, DevOps, but in a more conversational way to make sure the team can work further.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really cool. Well, you said you're already working on OpenAI. There's a lot of buzz going around, of course, about OpenAI. I'm sure that's really exciting also for you.
Yeah, totally. Well, and one of the things that's been super crazy is all of the hype with ChatGPT and how that's really gotten people to kind of think about this. And what's kind of funny from our perspective is the existing models like Text DaVinci 002 were already super powerful. And what they really did with ChatGPT was they kind of slapped a conversational interface on top of these already powerful models. It made it really easy to interact with. And that's kind of our theory for why we're seeing so much kind of demand and for these and traction for these models. So it is exciting. Satya tweeted a while back that we're working on bringing those to Azure. So we certainly have lots of demand because of that. We're working hard to make that happen.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a very exciting field. But what specifically in AI excites you?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I moved over to the Azure OpenAI team fairly recently. And one of the things I think is super exciting is with the evolution of these large language models, it's the first time where these models are really a platform. I think we've been really good for a few years of kind of creating these models that can do particular tasks. We can transcribe natural language to text or do all these different things. But now these models are really a kind of a platform. And I think they've been around for a few years, but I think we still have so much to learn. So in my mind, it's almost still a blue ocean of what are the use cases for where we can really help these scale? What are the scenarios where these are really valuable and can be cost effective? So I think there's so much to learn. So I think it's a matter of kind of democratizing this technology, making it accessible to people, and really kind of helping people understand the patterns to be successful with it. So I think that's the super exciting thing. There's so much to learn, and the field is moving so quickly. You figure even just between now and a year ago, the quality of the models is drastically different. The people's expectations for the models are different. So I think there's just a lot going on, and it's super exciting because of that.
Well, you're talking also about democratizing AI. How is your team trying to work on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I guess like the big thing I think is just kind of first just getting these into the hands of customers and getting them in the hands of customers in a way that they can use. We kind of talked about like compliance and like one of the things is like you're getting a product onto Azure. There's now like a fairly high barrier to entry. Like there's a lot of work we do to make sure we have all the security, privacy, stuff like that. So like for example, one thing we offer is like managed identity. So like making sure we give kind of all the support around these models that the customers need to be successful. There's also kind of all the responsible AI stuff. So it's a matter, I think, of like kind of doing all these pieces so that a CEO at a Fortune 500 company can stand up and say like, hey, like we're able to use these models in our product. We can do so confidently. And then beyond that, kind of like helping people understand like how do you actually use this. One thing like making it available, and the next thing is like making sure customers are successful. We tell people the patterns and that sort of stuff.
Okay, so yeah, well, it's a bit also. We had an interview before with Bob Reynard.
Oh yeah.
And he says also the difference between, okay, you have the OpenAI services and the Microsoft OpenAI services, of course, bringing it to an enterprise level and adding all the security and everything. So that's also what your team is actually doing.
Exactly, and we work fairly closely with Bob. Bob is one of our commercialization PMs, so he's working closely with customers to help make them successful.
All right. Now, how do you think AI will impact your own personal life?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And one of the things that's funny, so we mentioned ChatGPT. I was actually kind of working on some of our documentation for that. And I kept thinking like, hey, like maybe I should use like ChatGPT to help me write this. And one of the interesting things is like, oh, I know how to use the model and I'm pretty good at prompting it. But I found kind of like, it was still difficult for me to kind of go out of my normal flow from like writing a document in Markdown to like kind of going and pasting stuff into the model. So I think one thing that'll be interesting is like as these tools evolve to kind of make it, make it easier for us to interact with. Like I think Copilot is like a pretty good example. Like I think of myself as a pretty good coder, but I am like such a better coder with Copilot. Like sometimes like Copilot like impresses me. Like it'll suggest some code. I'll be like, oh, that's not right, and I'll change it, and then I'll run it, and I'll be like, oh shoot, it was right. I was the one who was wrong. And I think the other interesting thing is like it even like teaches you new things too. Like for example, I write a lot of like quick and dirty like Python code, like the type of code PMs would write. And I know, like for example, when you use pandas in Python, they pretty much tell you like, hey, like you're probably not supposed to use for loops, and I write a ton of for loops, and I know like the whole like the df.apply pattern, like that sort of stuff, but I've never really been good about using it properly. And whereas now when I use Copilot, I say like, hey, I want to do this thing. Copilot can suggest like how to do it that way. So it's even like teaching me new patterns to write better code in addition to just making me more productive. So I think one of the things that it will like I'm excited to see is like as we see kind of more like Copilot type solutions roll out. I know that's something that like, kind of Satya was talking about with the big Bing announcements. Like, so I'm actually super excited about even like kind of having this an edge where it's now going to be more and more integrated in our normal workflows, so we can start to use it more and more. So I think just like giving us more tools so we can use this to augment like our own human ingenuity is going to be super powerful. So I'm excited to. For more of those things to come. And I find like I almost don't like coding outside of Visual Studio Code now because I'm like, where's the Copilot? Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially the embedding of these kinds of services in more business applications is really going to make a difference for many organizations. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Now, one more question, Derek. What do you love about your job?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's a few things. Like I always think about like the day-to-day work. I think it's really about both the technology and the people. Like I think those are the two things that really kind of get me out of bed in the morning. But then kind of like going beyond that too. I think like it's so like because it's such like a new field with these large language models. Like the amount of learning we can do, the amount of stuff that there is to figure out. I think that's what's super exciting. So getting this into the hands of customers, figuring out what are like the best ways of using these things. 'Cause it's funny. I'll get on some calls with customers and they're like, oh, can you walk us through like all the best practices for this brand new thing? And it's like a lot of times like we'll have some pretty good answers, but like there's still so much to learn. And so I think one thing that's kind of fun about our current position is all of Microsoft is working on building these into our products as well. So we're learning a lot from just working with our internal customers. We learn some from working with our external customers, and together I think we're really kind of learning how we can be most effective with these things. So I think that's like super exciting. Where it's this, it feels like we're almost in like this AI renaissance, and we get to be kind of in the middle of it, which I think is super exciting.
Yeah, it's a new revolution that's going on.
Yeah,
Okay,
totally.
Derek, thank you very much for your time. It was nice to get to know you a little bit more and about what you're doing at your job. So I'm happy that we could have you here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sammy.